When I first encountered Lazaris at age 12 or 13, it was through a cassette called Earth Energy, Earth Power. And being exposed to the concept or idea within a largely Christian paradigm, the first question was, is this a devil? Is this a demon? Is this something to be worried about? And I did my best to kind of analyze all the different angles, something that an abused child tends to do, because it is always the authority, the parents, the teacher, the grown-ups who committed the sins, perpetrated the abuses, and stood by protecting themselves at the expense of the child. And I couldn't detect an obvious scam or threat. And I was particularly looking at, brainwashing and abuses of power. Was Lazaris going to ask for money or obedience or something like that? And nothing like that came up. And as one forms a relationship through repeated exposure to any unique entity or pattern, one forms a unique identity in relationship with the pattern one is exposed to. And of all the things humans are most attached to, it tends to be their identity, their sense of self. This is me, and I want to hang on to that, to me. Once that attachment is made, which is perhaps more aptly said an attachment to the identity in relationship with a given pattern, be that a human being, be it an idea, be it a channeled entity. There is a sense of familiarity, there is a sense of safety, there's something integrated in that identity. And in the case of Lazaris, there was humor, there was clear evidence of intelligence, there was creativity, innovation, and a very strong message of value and power. What could be more powerful than to say that you created all? What could be more valuable than a continual message of love and delight to be in presence? I came to this statement probably a few years after I had met and encountered Lazaris, and by that point, the identity that I was attached to within the Lazaris material translates into an attachment to what Lazaris is saying. We're your friend. We're not your teacher, your master, your guru. We're your friend. And I want to, unpack this clip here, because what this clip is saying is that in the entire possibility field of the planet, we're not just talking probability, we're talking about the entire possibility field of the planet, that there's a 40 or 50 year span in which the most powerful deities and that will ever contact the planet is doing so now exclusively through Jach Pursel, just because that's the way it is. Now, if I had heard that in the first hour of Lazaris relationship, I would have scoffed who is this bozo? What makes you so sure about the eternity of the future? It's a pretty long time. What makes you so sure that you are the only resonance that will ever come from your levels? A level which creating universes is kind of an offhand comment. We're creating some universes, some solar systems, working on a planet, seeing what happens, creating thoughts, letting it permeate out, into the world. And by the way, it's only here through Jach Pursel. It'll only ever be here in the entire history of the planet. Now, that's a pretty strong hook. Now, Lazaris talks about having access to every memory bank on the planet, apparently including my own. And if that is to be believed, one has to have some semblance of psychology and understand the hook. And the question is, why is it used? If you are going to spend all of 5 or 10 minutes in 45 years talking about yourselves and your dimensions, etc., why not share something else, such as the joy of knowing through communion, or the what you're learning? What is it that Lazaris is learning from human beings that he didn't understand before? What's that? Because that's, if you want to do a power grab, you focus on, there's nothing more vertical. I don't think that, you can look at Christianity, the one true God, the only one that is. But Lazaris is, of course, bigger than that, way beyond gods and deities. Is there a bigger power grab in the history of the planet than to say one is the ultimate being that will ever touch the planet for 50 years through one human being? That is a predictable hook. And the question is that the hook of a friend? In other words, if we lend credence to Lazaris talking about being the greatest being that's ever lived, let's just say that's true for a moment. If you were the greatest being that ever lived, creating galaxies and universes, solar systems, of course, planets within that, and you're talking to an individual on a planet, in a universe, and you want to create a friendship, well, the first thing is, do you want it to be a vertical relationship? Do you want it to feel and to be a relationship of equality, of mutual respect and power? Or do you want it to be a vertical relationship where I'm the greatest being that's ever been, and you don't even create thoughts. You think thoughts that people like us create. And the question is, what would you choose? For example, as an adult, we don't have that many of them, I understand, but assuming a really mature, responsible adult in relationship with a 5-year-old or a 10-year-old child, what is the 10 minutes that you want that child to know about you? Is it, look at all these office buildings, I own them all, I created this whole city, whatever you do is because of me, whatever? Or is it tell us about you and what's real. And, we both enjoy food, and we both, enjoy things that create an ease through symmetry. How would you go about that conversation as a competent adult? And with access to every memory bank on the planet, how would you go about as a creator of universes? How would you make your introduction? Here's who we are. And I don't think that if I wanted to be friends with someone, that I would bring that up in the first 10 minutes of a friendship. By the way, I create universes. It's so out of scale that there's no way to relate. It's a distancing message. Hello, my name is Dane. You're a little person on a planet. By the way, I create universes. You can't have a relationship, let alone a friendship. It doesn't make sense from a psychological point of view for someone who's apparently studied the psychology of the planet. So there's an inconsistency. There's a definite probability field around that statement. Now, what do I mean? What I mean is that if I am in a room of 1,000 people, and let's bring it down to earth just a little bit. If I'm in a room with 1,000 people, and we're socializing, and we're hello, how are you, etc., and I go to the front of the room and get a microphone and say, I'm Dane Rose, and I am the wealthiest person on the planet. Now, this is nothing to creating universes. I'm the wealthiest person on the planet. I am the wealthiest person who has ever been on the planet. And I create countries. I'm fiddling around with a new country out in the Pacific Ocean. Enjoy your drinks. What would be the predictable effect of 1,000 Americans in response to this statement? Have you heard of this guy? I don't know. There's a natural tendency to find rank in power within a cultural ranking system. And let's just say that the 1,000 people believed me, that I was the wealthiest person to ever exist, that I was busy creating countries. Well, let's look at the statistics of 1,000 Americans. 1 in 7 are substance addicts. More people commit suicide than die in car accidents. 1 in 3 domestic relationships contain aspects of domestic violence. Trauma is an epidemic within the culture, both in childhood and in adult relationships. Human beings are valued less than their money. This is an incredibly painful probability field. You have a government that will kill its own people for violating absurd protocols. You've got political corruption. You've got betrayals at every level. You've got 1 in 3 women are raped. Or is it 1 in 4 women are raped? 1 in 3 girls before the age of 18 are molested in one form or another. This is a highly traumatized cult or culture, if you look at the intelligence aspects of the cult. This is an incredibly painful and traumatic cult. Now, what does pain and trauma produce in a culture, in a cult, high levels of reptilian brain function, fight, flight, and freeze, high levels of fear. When the reptilian brain is activated, in order to survive in a sociopathic environment, which is ever present within the probability field of those statistics, there is a sense of fear-based fight, flight, and freeze, and fawn. These are the four common reactions. So if you can run away from an aggressor, from a powerful person that's trying to hurt you, you run. If you can beat a threat or exploit a more vulnerable person, you fight. If you don't, caught between the two, you freeze. But if you can ingratiate yourself into the good grace of an abusive parent, of a teacher to get a grade, of an older boyfriend to look cool, whatever it is, if you can ingratiate yourself in a sociopathic environment, you fawn. You go into pleaser mode. How can we help? We're so delighted. And it's called ass kissing. But it is predictable psychological behavior in an abuse cult around a power figure. That figure could be famous, it could have money, it could be creator of universes. You have a power figure. And this behavior is 100% predictable. You take 1,000 Americans, by the way I create universes, and fawning, will it be 20%? 30%? 15%? Let's just say it's 20% of Americans immediately try to ingratiate themselves to a power structure. Okay, so we have Lazaris at presumably the top of the power structure. Then we have Jach Pursel. Or is it Penny? Who's the best one, right? Lazaris came to talk to Penny, but he only channels through Jach. Okay, so Jach and Penny up at the power structure. And then what do you have? You have the monopoly organization. You have concept synergy. And what does concept synergy and Jach and Penny have? Well, first of all, they can turn Lazaris on and off, right? The most powerful being. Anyone want to hear what the most powerful being ever to touch the planet in past, present, or future? Anyone want to hear what they have to say? Nah. Who needs that, right? So now that we've established, this this position, okay, there's an attachment. There's a hook. Okay, I want to hear what the powerful person in the universe wants to say. And why is Lazaris even bothering to talk to the rest of us? Well, because Penny said she'd share him. So you don't want to piss Penny off, right? She might just turn off the most powerful voice in the universe. Or Jach, or... and what about the staff and company of concept synergy in a monopoly position? Oh, and then there's all the, good 1,000 or so separate steps of various processes and programs at every level, that if you do all those things, then you'll have this wonderful reality. You'll have this wonderful reality. But there will be a nightmare. There will be a nightmare. And those that create the wonderful reality will still watch those people in the nightmare. The people in the nightmare will not see the beautiful reality, but the people in the beautiful reality will still see the nightmare. Well, I remember Lazaris commenting about Christianity, about why was it that all these good Christians were so interested in hell? And he supposed that it was because the good Christians could watch the bad Christians burn in hell for an eternity. The good Christians could watch the bad Christians burn in hell and, forever, and just watch them suffer. And he commented this was very good Christians, right? Good, wonderful Christian ethic to watch other people suffer. But it's a little bit similar, isn't it? If you're a good metaphysician and do all of our 1,000 techniques, you will have the dream. But if you're stuck in your negative ego, have payoffs, don't follow our techniques that work, then you will be in the nightmare, or even worse, the mediocrity in between. So we have the good Lazaris people and the bad Lazaris people in the nightmare, and the mediocrity in between that's even worse for some unknown reason. And then you have this brainwashing back and forth. Well, some people say this and some people say that. Which is it, Lazaris? Well, of course, you're asking the most knowledgeable person in the universe, right? You create your own reality. But now that we've established that, let's go into this point and this point and this point and this point. So take, careful notes. And then you have Lazaris. I remember the awestruck voice, maybe we shouldn't say this, but, one of the folks on the forum said, Lazaris told us that the Merlin Arthur legacy is the only way all the way home. It's the only way. So you're on a journey that used to be about going home. Now it's a journey coming home. I don't know quite what the difference is, but first you were going home, now you're coming home. That's the whole quest. And at the end, but the only way to go all the way home is the Merlin Arthur legacy. Okay? The Merlin Arthur legacy, 15th century myth about King Arthur, is the ticket, right? It's the way to get all the way home, not just to the next stop on the bus station or the next one or the next one. No, all the way back to God got us all that is. It's all the way home. And just buy our workshop, because and it's going to cost $600 or whatever, because we're not going to create a cassette tape for the people who have to pay rent, or let alone people in other countries that don't speak English. We're going to create a workshop for wealthy people, $600-700 a pop, plus plane fare and hotels and so good, $1,500 a pop perhaps, might average out by the time you've taken time off work or whatever. And so there's the way to go all the way home. Well, is that a hook? Is that so now you've got the most important being in the universe teaching the only workshop that will take you all the way home to God got us all that is, which isn't all the way to Lazaris, because Lazaris is much bigger than God. But it will, but does all that is include Lazaris? Going all the way home, does that include Lazaris? So you have another hook. Now, who wants to be in the workshop that can take you all the way home? And who wants to be in the workshops that can only take you a few miles on the way home? Or who wants to never go to the only workshop that takes you all the way home? I think it's a pretty big power grab. And so what's the grab? What's the hook? It's my own experience, and it is my belief based on common psychology, which Lazaris claims to be fully aware of, that that once an identity is formed, that one is attached to. And, Lazaris talks about self-importance as being kind of one of the biggest cause of human problems. So self-importance is the, self-pity and self-importance. That's just all the problems in the world. They just come down to self-pity and self-importance. But by the way, you're talking to the most powerful being to ever grace the planet, and whoever will. You're taking the only workshop that is going to take you all the way home. You're buying your material from the only source to get the Lazaris material. And your ancient ones, and your Lemurian dreamers, and your shining ones, and you create it all. Sound a little bit grandiose, a little bit self-important. And this, not surprisingly, is reflected in a tremendous amount of statistical superiority. As you'll listen and learn later, the contempt of concept synergy staff for the clients. The contempt of Jach and Penny for the staff and the clients. The, certainly asymmetrical idea of friendship, which we'll get into, later. And I've asked, dozens of Lazaris friends and community members, what work do you recommend, and are you growing? It's like, oh, Lazaris is the best. So Lazaris is the best. In fact, several Lazaris friends, said, I don't waste time with other teachers and other healers. It's all that. And then, of course, Lazaris is piling that on. Those that prey upon fear, those that do this, those other teachers, the Rajneeshans, where, he did illegal activity up there, and the Christians, which are hardly worth mentioning. If that's Christ-like, do it. If it's not Christ-like, don't do it. Heaven, it's just whatever it is. It's of course it's rather cavalier is hardly worth the time of someone who creates universes. To go into this religion or that religion, of all the religions that have ever existed on this planet alone and stuff. So it's appropriately dismissive. But these are identities. These are memories and associations in a traumatic environment where there is attachment to a certain amount of certainty for fear of the unknown. Because in a sociopathic cult like our own, the unknown is dangerous. You were born, it was unknown. And then so-and-so hit you, and so-and-so dropped you, and so-and-so left you unattended in a heated car. The unknown is terrifying when you live in a traumatic cult. And so these identities, so easy to dismiss from a king of universes or whatever, and I won't, it's also, you think of the political choices, so Lazaris is framing, studying the whole ecology, right? And he understands, of course, he could have talked to anyone on the planet. Why not someone from Uganda? Why not a black woman from Uganda? Or why not appear in the voice of an African-American slave in the 18th century? Time has no meaning for Lazaris. So we could pick any time, any gender, any skin color, any race, any country. I know. Let's go with an American white male for the highest deity, because there aren't enough deities that are men, right? Buddha, Muhammad, Christian, there's just not enough that are men. Why not go for another American white man as the only channel for the greatest being in the history of humanity? aware of human psychology, able to understand memory, able to predict probability fields, understanding that Lazaris has impact. It's a choice to be evaluated with skepticism. Couldn't find any woman to channel through? No friend of Penny would do? What about a quasi-conscious channeling where you could channel with Penny and she'd be aware of it? I mean, anyway. There is a contemptuous attitude that is predictable and a reality amongst the Lazaris community towards other people, towards the Muggles. Lazaris knew that. Lazaris knows that. Any psychologist could have predicted this. And Lazaris understands that he has impact and that we have impact on him, again, consistent with his narrative. So why have that impact? Why not a Ugandan woman? Why not someone who speaks multiple languages? What is the message in a global framework of superpower in which the United States throws its weight around hypocritically, sociopathically, and unethically, spending 25 times more in its military budget than any other country? What is the message? That, I mean, we all know Americans travel around the world expecting everyone to speak English. You know, if you want to spot the American in Turkey or the American in Baghdad or the American in Thailand, it's the frustrated, martyred person repeating English words. I want food, food. You understand? Food, that's what I want. I want you in your country to speak English. Why don't you get it? The arrogance of America is incredible. Well, is that self-importance benefited by having the greatest deity present himself through a white American male? I don't think so. I'd be much more impressed with Lazaris's psychological savvy if he came through a Chinese female or a black African-American slave, etc., etc., something that would have a dynamic influence, you know, that would cast a vote. And the only thing that I thought about this, and maybe now isn't quite the right time to go into that, but I noticed that Americans are often much more miserable than many people around the world. And men are often more miserable than women, more disconnected, more sociopathic, more prone to suicide, more prone to shame. Men, white American men, have a miserable time of it while being told through the cult ranking system that they're at the top of the pinnacle. People are much happier in Thailand. People seem much happier in many countries around the world. So maybe it is a pity move to come to the United States and come through white men who think they have everything because they can throw missiles around the world, but who don't know how to have friendships with other men. So maybe it is a move to bolster up one of the most sociopathic and lonely cultures with high addiction rates and low friendships and all. Maybe that is the move. But it's very hard. My biggest criticism of the Bible is God can't pick up a cell phone, all powerful, all knowing, can't call people send them a text, clarify this passage in a 2,000-year-old book. It's a joke. Lazaris doesn't choose to operate on equal terms. He chooses monologue over dialogue, dictating subject matter over following subject matter. If you have a magic time with Lazaris, he will script you to talk about your last meditation. Well, what if you want to ask questions about, well, why, Lazaris, haven't you talked about yourself? Or why aren't you doing group dynamics? Because at the core of friendship is behaving in a way that is consistent with the other person's best interest and optimal well-being. And that leads us into the rest of the statistics and, the statistics. Do the people, because whether Lazaris promises this or not implicitly, if you tell 1,000 people your teachings, which are not teachings because you're way beyond a teacher, your teachings and your techniques work, and you're the most powerful being in the universe, and you can only get this information from us this one time, just because. That's just the way it is. If you promise all that, and then bestow, by the way, if you sign up for us, you'll be a Shining One, a Lemurian, a this, a that, the other, a multi-dimensional being, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so those are the perks. You have to pay our fees and fly to wherever we are and talk about what we want to talk about, but, those are your perks. Would a logical conclusion of someone who believed that information be that the closer you are to Lazaris, or the closer you are to the material, or the closest you are to the monopoly, distribution, the Jack and Penny or concept synergy, that the more you would grow, for example, the happier you would be, the more you would create the dream rather than the nightmare. Meaning, if you imagine you're Lazaris who understands global memory banks all simultaneously, there's no time, every access to every memory bank simultaneously, including mine right now. If you understand that you're Lazaris looking through that, how many people out of the 1,000 do you think would conclude, you know what? He may be the most powerful being in the universe. He may have the only workshop that takes you all the way home. He may invite me to understand myself far more grandiosely than the average human being. But I'm sure my life would get worse if I associated with Jack, Penny, and Michael, or I associated with Concept Synergy, or I did lots of workshops. I believe that the person who loves me and is my friend and is so powerful they create universes will use their influence to ruin my life because they love me. Because that's what loving people do. Isn't that what parents do? And they ruin their children's lives and blame them for it and shame them for it. So I think that Lazaris would ruin my life too. And so that's why I'm going to go to a workshop. Because I can ruin my life faster and more efficiently if I pay $1,500 a pop to fly to another workshop. And that's why I'm taking time off work, because I want to ruin my life. No, that is absolutely absurd. If you do a 1,000-person survey, and I understand Concept Synergy, Penny scornfully rejected the idea of hearing from mere clients when one of the staff proposed it. But if you're going to, if you were actually going to poll 1,000 people, how many people think their life is going to get better if they work with Lazaris? And how many people think their life will get worse if they work with Lazaris? No one at a Lazaris workshop is going to say, I think my life is going to get worse if I do Lazaris workshop. So there's an implicit assumption that proximity to Lazaris's techniques, Jack, Michael, and Penny, and Concept Synergy is equivalent to growth, healing, health, love, success, having fun and being more success. This is the implicit promise. It's the implicit assumption. And anyone who discovers that they've spent all this money to be worse off is going to be pissed, is going to feel betrayed, is going to feel confused. What, the greatest being on the whole history of the planet couldn't help out here, or couldn't point the... What's going on? You think about a friend. So you're standing in the parking lot, and your friend is about to back into an $80,000 Mercedes. Do you say, hey, stop? You almost hit that car. Or do you stand back grandiosely and say, they need to learn their lesson. I don't want to interfere. Well, that's how you learn to look in the rearview mirror. It may cost you a few $1,000s and ruin your day and all that, but I'm your friend. I don't want to interfere in such trivial matters. Go ahead, back into the car. In fact, if you're driving at high speeds, 70, 80 miles an hour, and I can see you're about to have an accident, maybe amputate an arm, I don't want to interfere because I'm your friend and I'm interested in helping you grow. You're using our techniques in the complete wrong way, in the complete wrong circumstance. We could have a chat with you. We could bring something up. We could send you a dream. We could do this, that, the other. But no, we don't want to interfere. If you're being abused by Michael, Penny, and Jack for any number of reasons, ours not, we don't butt in because we're your friend. And again, you raise 1,000 hands. How many people expect a friend to advocate for justice, for fair play, for decency, for anything that's consistent with healthy self-love, with the well-being of your friend? And this is why so many people are furious at Lazaris, at Jack, Michael, and Penny, and at Concept Synergy. Without explicitly clarifying what not being a teacher and instead being a friend is, while nonchalantly mentioning that we create universes, one person after another has been shamed and humiliated by Concept Synergy, Michael, Jack, and Penny, has had a terrific or a horrific business experience selling. I've talked to vendors of Concept Synergy that say they're nuts. So why is all this horrible stuff happening to and around Lazaris, who creates universe and who loves his friend more than they can possibly imagine? But Lazaris has never asked me what I can imagine. Lazaris hasn't ever said, hey, Dane, as your friend, by the way, we're not going to charge you because friends don't charge friends to talk to them, but as your friend, I'd like to share something with you. And this is what I mean by friendship, and this is what I don't mean by friendship. And, you think of friends normally trying to be helpful, but we're staying out of it. You think of friends normally talking to you, but what we're going to do is we're going to sell you audio recordings, and then we're going to say that they are specifically for you, and then we're going to say that you created them. And so if they didn't work, maybe you're in negative ego. Maybe you're too self-important, meaning being a shining one wasn't enough, to deflate you. You're too self-important. or you're in too much self-pity. And, when you stop taking your payoffs, we'll stop mentioning that that's the reason you're failing. It's much easier to succeed, but you just won't do it. And you come back again to the teachers. Now, we know in the United States that inner cities, which would be another great place for the highest channel to ever touch the planet, to advocate for, for our minorities and things, but that inner cities, those children are 1,000% more likely to grow up in prison, drug addicts, this, that, and the other. And we know that traumatized children can't learn. We know that the best teachers don't like teaching in slums. So they don't. They make more money teaching white kids in nice neighborhoods where Lazaris clients can afford to go off to Lazaris events. And yet, there are about 1% of dedicated, competent teachers who fight for those kids, who fight for their dignity. And those kids adore those teachers, and they make a difference. And we know that the students of those kids do 200%, 300% better in scores, in life outcome, than the students where the teachers really don't give a damn, where it's endless monologue and not much dialogue, where it's all preaching and not much practice, a little bit like a Lazaris workshop. We know that good teachers have far better results than bad teachers, statistically speaking, and we honor those teachers for taking the same horrible conditions to teach in and doing 300% better than their peers. But I get the feeling that if Lazaris or anyone at Concept Synergy was teaching these kids, they'd be telling the kids to create their own reality. I'm a shitty teacher. Who cares? I do monologue instead of group interactions. Who cares? Just benefit. This doesn't work. You know it doesn't work. I know it doesn't work. If you have any doubts, if any ethics board will allow you with that level of stupidity to go in front of a bunch of kids and say, by the way, all that abuse and rape and incest at home, you created that. You decided before this lifetime. You chose your parents specifically so that they could harm and humiliate and ruin your lives. And most of you are going to die in addiction and crime and gangs and all that. But that's all part of your plan. It's not even God's plan, it's your plan. And if you want to suddenly start learning mathematics in a doped-up classroom with gun violence, just go ahead. Learn about mathematics. It has nothing to do with your teacher. It has to do with you. And this is the chauvinistic emphasis on the individual. This is pure bullshit. And you know it, and I know it. And if you want to gather 1,000 people to emphasize the point, this will be borne out over and over again. I felt like a shit as an abused child. Every time I heard Lazaris talking about we could have a world without any pain, ending fear, ending this. No, it could be wonderful. The new age is coming. I'd take off the headphones, and my siblings were being shamed and abused right outside my bedroom door. It felt painful. It felt lonely. And it obviously wasn't those folks at Concept Synergy. They were all creating the dream, right? I was in the nightmare, thinking that the folks at Concept Synergy were in the dream. They were in the dream, and I was in the nightmare. Clearly not a mediocrity. I was suicidal. I was in the nightmare. because I was too self-important. Now, if some teenage kid doesn't pull out a gun and blow your fucking head off, they ought to. Because this is cruel, sociopathic abuse of children, consistent with data that actually works. And it is in this context where you have the expectation. Every business owner knows, by the way. Why did I tell my clients I would be done in 2 months from now with their landscape, when I'll be done in about 5 weeks? Why did I tell them 2 months? Because people are happy when you keep your promise and you over-deliver. 95% of my jobs are done early. And clients are happy because they're done before I said they'd be done. All of my jobs are done on budget, and I usually throw in a little bit extra. Clients are happy because I do what they're expecting. Now, it's my job as a business owner to have a contract that spells out what they can expect. Because if we just shake hands, and you can try this sometime if you haven't run a business, try doing a handshake that goes like this. I'm here to help you. I'm really great at helping you. I'm here to help you. You're going to pay me a fair wage. And I'm going to help you. Sound like a good plan? Well, if you know anything, you say, get the hell out of here. But let's say you say, shake on it. Okay, we're shaking on it. And then you look at the statistical probability that whatever it is that you thought was help actually lands as being helpful rather than a nuisance or a betrayal or whatever. And then the customer said, well, I thought it would be done by now. You say, no, it's you got it all wrong. Well, did the customer get it wrong, or did you not spell out your terms? Well, the new age has come and is in full swing, along with Trumpianism and everything else that's so wonderful about the new age. Lazaris promised the new age would be here, and here it is. But was this what people paid the workshop to associate with? Well, those details were not gone into, were they? You know, I don't know if I was talking to a child. You know, back there I used to live in the old age, you know, back in the 70s and 80s. But this is the new age. Isn't it wonderful? You see, back in the old age, there was corruption and bullshit and broken up relationships and trauma and addiction. And in the new age, there's corruption and trauma and broken relationships and higher levels of pollution. We're in the new age. You have no idea how lucky you are. This is it. You're here. You're born in the new age. How do the millennials feel about living in the new age? Higher suicide levels, lower wages. Is it really consistent with the expectations? But of course, we wouldn't want to feel sorry for ourselves. No, or be a negative ego. Terrible. No. Be grateful. Be grateful that the new age is here. People are pissed because the psychology is set up that the act of protesting the betrayal has already been defended. I mean, you can't scam someone better than this if you want to. If you can convince someone that protesting the scam is a symptom of your inadequacy, and that's all it is, and not only that, that protesting the scam is the reason that you're not living in the new age, meaning you would be in the new age But you're protesting the scam, see? You had a payoff. You wanted to protest the scam more than you wanted the new age. Now, there's another country where the millennials are more engaged than they are in this country. But you're not in that country because you've got a payoff. You've got this and this and this and this. And, and there's people in that new age. They're looking down on you with pity and compassion. Of course, they're not going to come over and tell you how to get to the good place, but they look down, perhaps a little condescendingly. I'm glad I'm not down there. I'm up here with the good Lazaris folk. They're up there. We're not going to help you see how many in the room. We're not going to raise a hand and say how many people in the room have done a 33-second technique. Okay? What percentage of your 33-second techniques work? So you visualized a new car with your 33 seconds. Okay, so how many, let's see how many had the new car in 3 days? One person? No one? Two people? Okay, and everyone has done the technique? Let's everyone do an experiment. Okay, so we're all going to visualize what we most want for 33 seconds, and then we're going to hear how many people got it 3 days later. And we are actually, as the teacher, going to take responsibility. In the same way, a woodwork professional does not blame their students if 98% of the people in a woodworking class cut their finger off. Do you think the principal wants to hear the woodwork teacher's bullshit about how the children created their reality? Or do you think the principal wants to hear, what the fuck are you doing that you don't teach kids how to not cut off their fingers? Why are you giving tools that they don't know how to use? What are you doing? Get the fuck out of here. We're going to hire a competent teacher where 99.9% of the students do not cut their fingers off. Consistent with good teaching practices. But 99% of people use this technique that works and don't have a new car in 3 days, or don't have whatever it is, their world peace, whatever it is, where they create the whole reality. And then there's this constant brainwashing. You create it all, but you have to do it like this. You create it all, but that's not how it works. You create your own reality, but not like this, like this. You create your own reality, but not in this area, but you do it 100%. That brainwashing, we have all the power and we're going to spell it out. You have all the power and we're not going to teach you how to use it. We have all the power and you have to do it like this. You have all the power and we're not going to teach you to use it. You go back and forth. It's like, Lazaris, just tell me what to do. And Lazaris has talked about this. He understands this psychology. So why does he use it? Why does he use it? And why are there so many workshop participants at a Lazaris seminar who feel ashamed of admitting that their life is like shit? Why do people who can't afford it rent a more luxurious car to go to a Lazaris seminar? To look good, right? We're in the good crowd. We're creating the dream. I hope I'm not the only one creating the nightmare. And Lazaris has access to their memory banks, but isn't kind enough to address them and point out some of this bullshit. When everyone's suffering in shame by techniques that don't work, through a chauvinistic interactive protocol in which we're going to do all the talking on our terms and you're going to pay us. And we're not going to ask for a show of hands. I'd be willing to bet $1,000 that one could take 1,000 Lazaris people in the room, and if they were completely candid, that the majority of people's hands would go up in concept synergy, Jach and Lazaris and Penny, and in the room, at feeling shame for doing it wrong. Should the student who cuts off their finger in a woodworking class because the teacher didn't show them how to use a table saw feel shame? Or should the teacher be fired? Lazaris has a whole ethic on responsibility and acknowledges that he has impact. But if you criticize the impact, hey Lazaris, this doesn't feel good. I don't like hearing this. I don't like hearing all the bullshit that's going on in concept synergy. Doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good because it doesn't fit my definition of an acquaintance, let alone a friend. Oh, sure, in an abuse cult like our own, most acquaintances don't give a damn. I once talked with a colleague at a relationship school of the woman who was being cheated on. And I said, her boyfriend asked me to cheat on her with me. I said, I feel terrible. I asked him to clean it up, and he threatened me physically if I told her. What do you think I should do, Penny? It was a woman in the office. She said I'd stay out of it. And she carried on working with her friend and coworker, letting her be betrayed. So maybe in America you do stand by and let your acquaintances and your friends be betrayed. But let's not sully the word of friendship with such contempt, with such cruelty, with such disowning of excellence and responsibility. And this brings me to the biggest split. All of these things are diametrically opposed to what Lazaris teaches in the material, a whole tape on excellence. And I have the crappiest media experience from Concept Synergy than any company that I've bought media from. A whole tape on the Merlin Arthur, the Knight of Courtesy. Try getting a courteous response to a criticism of Concept Synergy. They don't exist. Other companies have polite apologies and this. No. Lazaris has never made a mistake despite people dying or being sick according, inconsistent with their readings and findings. I don't believe Lazaris has apologized once. But we're your friend, and we hurt you. We stood by as you hurt yourself. That's not a friend, Lazaris. That's a sociopath. And I've brought these questions to Concept Synergy and Lazaris. He doesn't want to answer them. That's not a friend either. That is cruel, sociopathic, disowning. And that hurts. That hurts. And it concerns me greatly that the closer someone is to Jack, Michael, and Penny, whether it's a business or a client or a staff member, the more likely the person is to be shamed and abused, to the point that businesses fire Michael, Jack, and Penny. The businesses don't want to work with Concept Synergy, that employees are left in their wake in worse condition than when they arrived. Don't blame the students for having their fingers cut off because someone doesn't know how to teach woodworking. Hold the leader at the top. Hold the teacher who claims they're not a teacher, they're just the greatest being and and their techniques work. Hold them responsible for being a competent teacher through dialogue rather than monologue, through group sessions rather than individual note-taking, through feedback and learning, through practice, and through statistical data gathering. Every single business mentor that I've had has taught me something valuable about business. I can't think of anything I learned from Lazaris about that. But I have Lazaris friends who know nothing about business, ruining their finances, and busily doing these techniques over and over again? It makes no sense, because they're steered the wrong way by the snobbery within the community. The snobbery in the community, why would you try anyone else? Lazaris is the best. By what measure? By an unrecognizable, unmeasurable statement. What are you going to do if I tell you, by the way, I'm outside your set. I'm not physical. I'm just channeling through Dane. I create universes. Our techniques work. And this is the only place you're going to get the only information to return to God. And if it doesn't work, well, you created your own reality. What are you going to do? You're going to ruin your life? Or are you going to say, go fuck yourself? Go fuck yourself. We don't need that kind of grandiosity. We need a friend we can talk to who empathizes and doesn't say things like, oh, why'd you create that? It's funny. We're laughing because it's funny. Why'd you do that? Why'd you do that? It's funny. In a cult of addictive pain management, sociopathic behavior, traumatic mental, physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, high levels of suicide, high levels of toxicity, pain, and disease. To offer this kind of relationship without a clear contract of what do we mean by friend? What are we going to do, and why do we stand and let them drive into the car? Well, Lazaris says he's not going to tell us the cure for cancer, because what we would do is we'd create a worse disease, and so he wouldn't be helping us at all. We would just create a worse disease, and so we have to learn the lesson of cancer on our own. Okay, so let's learn that. Let's practice that. Let's go through how many people in the room have cancer? How many people have had it? What didn't they learn? How could other people learn from their mistakes? This is how people learn, through ritual and engagement. No, we're just going to tell you, if you get cancer, you didn't handle your anger issues. You did it wrong again. You could have had a spontaneous healing. Other people do it. How many? How many in Lazaris have had a spontaneous healing? I've never met them. Maybe they're there. Penny didn't have a spontaneous healing. Michael didn't find a reason to live other than suicide. Is it that the closer you are to concept synergy, the more toxic the relationship dynamic is, and the closer you are to Lazaris, it gets even worse? To where the two closest people to Lazaris die in morbid obesity and suicide? Is that the competence of the teacher, who's beyond being a teacher, who's a friend? Or is that Michael and Penny were worse off than most of the other people, and that's why Lazaris wanted to talk to them? Who knows? But this is crazy making to try and sort out as an individual. And by the way, I'm outside your set. And nothing really on our side is going to make that much sense to you. How isolating. How lonely. We love you more than you will ever know? Maybe. Maybe. But I've never been asked how I'd like to be loved by Lazaris. And I've never gotten a response because it was never asked. I'd like to ask these questions. Does loving more than we know include answering them? So what is one supposed to say? That to be loved more than you can ever know is to be loved less than any human being? Because if you asked me these questions, I'd give you an answer. I'd say, that's bullshit. I'm not the highest being, blah, blah, blah. I'm only right about 75% of the time here. I'm right about 85% of the time here. I'm a jerk in this area, but I'm working on it. I'm kind over here. If you approach me in this way, I can be at my best. If you approach me here, I'm at my worst. Let's negotiate. I can answer these questions. And it's not more love than you ever know. It's the exact amount of love that I'm competent to give. No need for grandiosity. And I'm going to ask you, how does it feel? How does it feel to be loved by me? Is there anything I can do better? What's causing you pain in the relationship? What's making you happy? What could I do to make it better for you? How could I reduce the pain? And here's what you can do. You see, and my wife loves me more than Lazaris 100-fold. She doesn't promise to love me more than I've ever been loved before. She apologizes for not loving me more. No one loves perfectly as a human being. I don't, you don't, she doesn't. But she still talks to me rather than monologue. She holds me rather than inviting me to visualize a ball of light. So more than I will ever know, there's not a lot that I know. It hurts. It hurts to see other people being hurt in this terrain, and it hurts to be divided. Because one cannot know what is outside the set. But should we give our power to a deity that claims legitimacy based on information no human being can verify? I could say I'm the wealthiest person on the planet in Upistan, a country I just invented, and no doubt I am. You can't find out. So this is the criticism. This is the rebuttal. This is the pain that is an impact of Lazaris and concept synergy, of the contempt of the dominance within Lazaris and concept synergy. This is the impact on me and many people who are too ashamed to talk about it. And they are left in that shame by their friend, by concept synergy, in ways that in psychology mirror classic abuse, cult-like symptoms. There are Lazaris friends in severe chronic trauma from their interactions with Lazaris and their interactions with concept synergy. And that's not right. It's not right to confuse that level of pain with spirituality, with ideals, even with the teachings of Lazaris. I mean, miles apart. Abuse your staff. It's not right. And what I want to encourage each of you to do, if you've gotten this far, is read The Body Keeps the Score. Read Traumatic Recovery by Judith Herman. I was just emailing with her about doing an interview. Read the literature on shame, abuse, and trauma, and give Lazaris back the shame that you have taken because he wouldn't define the arrangement and then left you to feel small when you got an invisible contract confused. Give the shame back to concept synergy, who don't know how to run a company terribly well, who don't know how to treat their staff terribly well, and who certainly don't know how to apologize and take responsibility for their mistakes. Give it back to human beings who don't know what they're doing. Lift the confusion and the veil of this being more love than you could ever imagine. I can imagine a lot of love, and it doesn't look anything like this. And be well.